So again, my name is John Gessel. I'm our client relations coordinator here with Dayton O'Connor, our lead analyst, and Rob Bernhardt, our corporate counsel. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, if you have live questions, please submit them through the Q&A option. And we are just going to run through the submitted questions and then address any live questions for this session here. So we can just dive right in. The first question that we have submitted here is, I would like to better understand how royalties are earned and paid to the owners. So just general question about the royalty cash flow process, I guess. I am going to be posting some resources in the chat for you all to look through. There are general investor resources, but we can address this one via discussion. Dayton, do you want to speak to royalty earning?
Yeah, I mean, at a high level, royalties are earned when the titles in a catalog are performed. And that is a function of the royalty source and the rights that are involved. So, for example, ASCAP or any of the PROs are going to pay out a royalty for any titles that they have the right to license to that are utilized in a public performance context. There are different kinds of income streams. So the royalties that are getting paid out are going to vary by the rights that are being implicated by that particular performance. But that's the answer at a high level. And how it's paid to the owners, usually the licensing entity that manages that catalog is then going to pay the royalty to the rights holder, which can be the songwriter, the publisher, or the performing artist. And in the royalty exchange context, that royalty would be directed to us for any of the titles that we administer on behalf of our investors. And we would then pay that royalty to the investor.
Perfect. Awesome. And now I'm just posting these links in the chat. So if you want to take a look, we have those resources available too. Okay, next question that we have here. I'm very new to this, so I'd want to know everything basic. Is my money guaranteed a payout monthly? And what are the risks? So the payment frequency of the asset that you purchase depends on the asset you purchase. Typically, we go by the royalty payor for the particular asset, and it varies from asset to asset. Most commonly, companies will pay on a quarterly basis. So that's really what you should expect. You can always see that information on the data files of any listing on the site. But some companies do pay monthly, others will just pay annually. So always good to keep that in mind when making purchases, just so you know what to expect moving forward. As for risks, I mean, as with any investment, there is inherently risk. For royalties, depending on the term length, really the risk is your time to recoupment and your subsequent upside. Of course, there's always a chance that somehow the music or whatever royalty you bought just stops earning altogether and goes to zero. It's very unlikely that could happen, but it's always possible. That's why we include the full history of the earnings, so you can kind of see how it's been behaving for the lifespan of the earnings. That's why we also have our Dollarage metric, which is a really important metric on the site for understanding consistency and what to expect moving forward. So I'll post that guide also in the chat. So a combination of everything should help you navigate the waters of understanding value. But inherently, we can't make any guarantees to the future performance of these assets. We just don't know. All we can do is arm you with the information that we have on hand and what it looks like. Next one we got here is, how are the payouts taxed? Rob, you want to talk about tax stuff?
Yeah, so royalty income is considered ordinary income. So you'll get a 1099 MISC every year that covers all your royalty earnings. If it comes through royalty exchange will be sending that out. If you own royalties from a different asset, whoever is the one that's paying you the royalties will be the one to send you that 1099.
And for international investors, that's W8BEN. We just follow the tax laws for whichever country you're reporting from. So whatever that tax treaty is, we'll just follow that for withholding. Next one here, how do I maximize my investment through the royalty exchange? It's a tricky question. Buy good assets at good prices, really. I mean, Dayton or Rob, do you guys have anything to add to that?
No, I think the best resources and most direct stuff is the blogs that we have that you've been linking. So I think that's really going to be the best answer if you want a more general and kind of more all-encompassing answer.
Data, anything else for that one?
I would simply say seek value, where you can find it. Different assets are going to represent different types of income. So depending on what your investment goals are, if you're seeking a steady return versus, potential high upside that comes with high risk, you need to consider what you're looking for and have that be mapped to the assets that you're bidding on our platform.
Awesome. That being said, we also always encourage investors to do their own due diligence on the artists, prominent artists in a catalog, how something looks outside of the financials we provide. If you see something you really like with how an artist is marketing themselves, that could indicate an increase in the royalties. And so you could see value where others may not, right? So do your own due diligence. It's always important to have context, full understanding of an artist and asset, and what's happening in that world too. Next question here is, how beneficial is the membership? What stats are revealed? This is in reference to our all access membership, which is our paid membership. So the value of the membership really depends on how active and aggressive you are in purchasing royalty assets. The big value there is the cost savings, because they can be pretty significant if you're active on the marketplace. So as an all access member, we waive buyer's fees for you, which is 1% of the purchase price, or $500. And you also have a 20% discount on any resale. So the savings can be pretty significant, especially if you're dealing with larger catalogs. As far as stats, we give you visibility into our analyst benchmark pricing there, which is essentially the mean value of the asset compared to other catalogs of similar cohorts on the market. So it can be really helpful in getting a rough range. Ultimately, it is just a median price. It's not an actual valuation. So keep that in mind. But again, can be helpful. Beyond that, there's access to the all access insights pieces that we do every month, which are deeper studies into asset performance, genres, royalty income type, how they're performing, year over year, things like that. So we do deeper studies into these assets. So yeah, those are the major takeaways. I don't know, Dayton or Rob, if you guys have anything else that you want to add to that. I mean, if you're interested in talking about the all access membership, I do encourage you to give me a call. I'm happy to talk through what the membership holds and what your goals are to see if it's really right for you. It's definitely not for everybody. It is expensive to get started, but again, if you're active, it's absolutely worth it. We've seen people save thousands and thousands of dollars through the membership. So yeah, give me a call. Next one here. How do I make money off of buying these songs? If I buy one, can I license what I buy? Rob, you want to talk about additional?
Yeah. So what you're buying is a passive interest in a royalty stream. So you don't have in almost every case, you don't have the authority to go out and issue licenses. You're really just kind of investing alongside the other rights holders. In pretty much all scenarios, there's going to be either a music publisher or record label that is going to hold those licensing rights. They have an interest in licensing the songs, and then you're basically just kind of earning alongside them. Every once in a while, we'll have an asset on the site that the copyrights are included, but that's certainly very rare.
Cool. Next question we have here is, what's the earliest I can bid? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. New assets go live on the exchange at, it's 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you're looking for new assets, that would be when they go live. We aren't really time bound because we have investors all over the world. So earliest that you're willing to get up and bid, I guess. Other than that, I guess for the auctions, it would be as soon as the asset goes live, which again, assets go live at that same time every day. Next question we have here. When are investors provided a year-over-year return on royalty streams for a song? The website at best just gives a 3-year average. So we provide the full raw data financials for every asset. So you can always dig into that data file and look for yourself. if you buy an asset, we'll also provide you the ongoing financials, which includes that raw data file. So you'll get that with every distribution. So every payment. The metrics on the actual listing itself really just give a picture of what you're buying. But if you wanted to do a further analysis, that's why we have that raw data file there. So I'd say take a look at that for anything that you wanted to dive deeper into. Dana, Rob, anything else you guys want to add to that? Great. Okay, next one here. How long does the transaction take to close? Rob, you want to talk about closing?
Yeah, it'll take anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks. Really, kind of our process is the way we work is as soon as a sale has closed, there'll be a purchase agreement and an invoice go out to the investor. Both the investor and the seller will sign the purchase agreement. The investor has 2 days to send us the funds and sign the documents. So as soon as the documents are signed, funds are in Royalty Exchange's hands, then we submit the assignment paperwork to whoever the distributor is. And then we do not release the proceeds to the seller until that distributor confirms for us that the assignment's been put in place. Just kind of a very last check to make sure that everything is in order and there's no more information needed from the distributor. Then once a day, the distributor has confirmed for us that the assignment is in place, then we consider it closed. That's when we release the proceeds to the seller. And then we'll be again collecting royalties on the investor's behalf and pay them through as we receive them.
Awesome. Next question we have here. What is the ideal royalty portfolio based on risk and return rates and probability? So this is a pretty impossible question for us to answer because it really depends on what your investment strategy is. So whether you're looking for, stable life of rights, consistent cash flow, or you're looking for, high yielding, high risk, high reward, younger assets, like it really depends. Typically balance is good, like something that's a deep catalog with a lot of tracks that's earning consistently along a lot of different songs from a lot of different sources. It's normally something we like to see kind of, inherently insulated. But really it depends on what you're looking for. Dayton, do you have anything you want to talk about with ideal portfolios and risk returns analyses?
I can talk to a couple of specific things. At a high level, John hit the nail on the head. We can't speak to what the ideal portfolio is because only you, the investor, can determine what that is for you. What's your risk appetite? How much are you willing to spend on royalty assets, like on a buy asset basis and as like an overall share of your total portfolio? That's up to you. I know from some of the activity from some of our investors, some people are interested in going after the smaller assets and the assets with lower dollar age because they see more value in bidding on those and acquiring those on the cheap because they're going to be able to enjoy the returns for those assets for the lifetime duration. Now, the other side of that is they're taking on a lot of risk because younger assets have a lot more variation in how they tend to perform over the long term. So you're potentially getting an outsized return, but you're also exposing yourself to a lot more downside. If you want to talk about probability, you would take a look at the higher dollar aged assets, catalogs and titles, which are mature relative to the rest of the market. They've been out there. They've got a fan base of people who are always going to be consuming them. In higher likelihood, given that they have been consumed for a longer period of time. And because there's a higher probability of a more consistent return with a older asset like that, it's going to have a higher price. So you're going to be contending with higher multiples and maybe a higher overall price, depending on what the last 12 months earnings was for that particular asset. So it's a balance. What do you want to get out of your music assets? Do you want to get a consistent return with something that has a higher probability of paying out over a longer period of time? You would probably want to take a look at higher dollar aged assets. If you have a higher risk appetite, you may want to take a look at the lower dollar age assets.
Yeah, dollar age, again, dollar age is a big metric on Royalty Exchange. So I encourage you to take a look at that link that I put in the chat. If you need me to send it again, let me know. It's also on our blog page for investors, so take a look at that. Kind of related to that last question, is there a system to judge what royalty has a higher value? Not formally. Again, it's really up to you and where your values lie and what you're going for in your own personal portfolio. Dollarage, again, big metric. Dayton, do you have anything else to add to that? I mean,
well, I think it's also assessing like on an asset by asset basis. So Dollarage is a very important component. You're also going to want to take a look at the mix of the income streams. How much of this money is coming from domestic versus foreign? Who are the partners that are involved with these kind of assets? So if you're looking at something that's paid in the US by BMI, then those royalties are coming from other PROs across the globe. If it's a digital distributor, they're handling a lot of those, they're licensing a lot of those performances themselves. And within that like income stream mix, how much of the money is coming from streaming, how much is coming from radio, from live, and then evaluate, what kind of, value you put on that kind of asset based on that mix. If it's streaming, expectation is that streaming royalties are going to increase in value over time because the revenue that's taken in by the streaming services is going to increase as they continue to grow. Stuff that's performed on radio may provide really high value performances, but radio is expected to shrink as an overall share of music revenue. So those are the kind of things that you may want to consider when you're taking a look at an asset.
Great. Next question here. Do you think artists will resist private equity getting more directly involved in royalties as an asset class? This is a tough question. I don't really have an opinion on it. I would doubt it because everyone likes money, and if they can get a good price for it. I don't know, Dayton, Rob, you guys have any thoughts on that? That's kind of a big question.
Some will and some won't, right?
Yeah.
And, the ones that are interested in looking at those kind of deals will, and if you're not, then they won't. I mean, I certainly think it's becoming more commonplace over the last couple of years. So, maybe that tide is turning a little bit, but yeah, I think there's certainly some people that won't have any interest in doing that at all.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
I think that your opinion of the financialization of music revenue is really going to be a function of your ideological tilt.
Yeah, definitely. Next one we got here. If you win a bid, how soon do you have to make the payment? Also, can payment be made via credit card? So this is a pretty important rule in royalty exchange. If you buy an asset, you will have 2 business days to fully fund that asset. That is a strict rule that we adhere to pretty closely. So always make sure that you are willing to pay and can pay in that 2-day period. And no, you cannot pay via credit card. Payments should be made via wire transfer. And part of the closing process will provide you with wiring instructions. So where to send all that to. We will be in touch with you to walk you through the process, make sure everything's set up, track the payments, all that. But yeah, that is a strict rule. So if you're a new buyer here, always make sure you can adhere to that rule. It is something we do take seriously. Next one here. How does it work? Again, point you to the investor guides. We put a bunch of them in the chat, but those have walkthroughs for the closing process, how to look at the market, stuff like that. How much did the coronavirus affect performance royalties? So it did impact it, obviously, but I think in a different way that most people expected. A lot of people anticipated a big drop in royalties, especially for performance, but that's not really the case. It really was more of a shift in the sources because people aren't going to live shows. A lot more people were streaming stuff, which still generates performance royalty. So that's my take. It didn't impact it a ton as far as earnings, but it impacted it based on consumption. On Dayton, Rob, if you guys have anything to add to that, any more context or insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple different things that are baked into this, which is what happened, what people expected to happen due to COVID and, the music industry generally, what actually happened and what, may happen in the future. And I think the expectation that, live would shrink because people aren't going to live shows, the revenues that are tied to general licensing for venues where music is performed, like bars and restaurants, those revenues would decrease. That all came to pass. People moving more onto streaming platforms, that also came to pass. One thing that we've also seen with a lot of other territories, especially ones that were more significantly hit by COVID and by the restrictions that come with quarantine and lockdowns, There's also like some currency volatility. Like I look at what's happening in Brazil, which I think is a function of what was going on with COVID, where the value of the real dipped relative to the dollar. Has been, that's been on trend for the past few years, but just as an example. Now, what's happening now, live is rebounding, people are still on streaming services. I think there was also some cut into the revenue tied to ads that were on radio. People were not commuting as much, so the advertising dollars became less valuable for radio commercials. That affected the radio revenue and the radio royalties that are associated with it. Expecting that to rebound. What's going to happen after this? Are these trends going to continue to hold? I think there was a lot of chatter, especially early on during the pandemic, of new kinds of platforms and streams of income that could be tied to some of these like experiential music consumption contexts, like replacing like live, moving more onto like streaming platforms. I'm not sure if that's going to continue to happen. I'm not sure if you're going to see the same kinds of really robust rates of growth for streaming services that you did during the pandemic as more people were adopting those particular services. So I think that kind of remains to be seen. I think the picture of like what the future looks like post-COVID in terms of how much it looks like 2019 versus how much it looks like, what people were thinking the future may look like is a little murky.
And the cool part about, the data that we have is that you could actually look at all this stuff.
Right.
A lot of that data is available on royalty exchange assets. You could look at the lifespan of the earnings, look at the sources and how they've been performing from, 2020, 2021, 2022, and based on the period they were paid, and understand like how that's all changed. So you could actually see for yourself what we're talking about. You'll just want to pay attention to the sources mostly, and also the earnings levels would be important too. But yeah, you can take a look for yourself, and maybe you'll have a different opinion. Next question we have here: is there a membership fee only for all access members? So there's no ongoing fee. It's free to have an account. The fee you would pay for royalty exchange purchasing is on a transaction basis. There's no ongoing fee beyond that. So yeah, just that one-time purchase fee. Next one here: I would like to learn more about your NFT buying processes. Rob, you want to talk about NFTs?
Sure. We've done a couple of them. We haven't done a ton. Really, the way that the NFTs that we've done have worked is it's a royalty exchange token, and the owner of that token has the right to collect the royalties for a specific royalty stream. So it's kind of pretty much exactly what royalty exchange does on every one of our deals. It's the same process, same purchase. It's just that the royalties would be collected by royalty exchange. We would convert those to Ethereum and then pay those out to the winning bidder's wallet or whoever owns the NFT. So the NFT itself gives the owner the right to collect the royalty stream, and that royalty stream is the same royalty stream that would be sold in any other deal on royalty exchange.
Perfect. Next question here: how much do I have to invest to start? That really depends on you and what your investment limitations are. Typically on the low end on royalty exchange, we see asset pricing like the $5,000 to $10,000 range. Occasionally you'll find stuff under 5K, but it's pretty rare. So that's a good lower tier to expect moving forward. Once rights are purchased, what are the steps required to receive the royalties? Rob?
Yeah, so this is just a recap of the earlier question. So you'll sign the purchase agreement. We'll send the assignment document to the distributor. Distributor will pay royalty exchange, and then royalty exchange will pay you. If you haven't already, we'll get you set up on our payment system that allows us to send statements and direct deposits. And usually it's within 10 days. We have 30 based on our accounting provisions for us to get the royalties from the distributor and then get them over to you.
Great. This next question here is a two-part question. Part one: when the royalty says for life, how can you calculate how long that royalty will be paid? And part two: how often a royalty is paid? So second part, we talked about distribution frequencies. So I'd say refer back to that. Rob, you want to talk about life of rights and what that means?
Yeah, when you hear a life of rights, what that refers to is the life of the copyright. So the life of the copyright in the underlying song. Each song has its own copyright and length. And the way that it works for all songs, at least in the US, created 1978 or after, is that the copyright is valid for the life of the last surviving author plus 70 years. So if there's, four folks that wrote a song, the last person were to die this year, that copyright would be valid for another 70 years. Once that copyright goes away, then the song enters what's called the public domain, and then anyone can use it for any reason and does not have to pay a licensing fee, which means the royalties go away.
Great. Next one here is, does this work with a Coinbase wallet? I mean, I think you should be able to receive payments to a Coinbase wallet. They can do Ethereum, right? Rob, do you know?
Well, just to clarify, this would only apply to assets that are specifically listed as NFTs. We
Right.
wouldn't pay royalties in anything but US dollars unless that asset was specifically sold as an NFT asset.
And we also wouldn't accept payment in a cryptocurrency for something beyond an NFT. So yeah, good clarification there. Now, as far as if it were an NFT, I believe we can, as long as they can take Ethereum, which I'm not certain. I think they can, but so yeah, I mean, as long as your wallet can receive Ethereum payments, that should work. Next question here: who enforces the royalty? Rob, you want to talk about enforcement?
Yep. So that again falls with the owner of the copyright, and there could be multiple different copyright owners for a specific song or recording. Typically, that's going to be the music publisher on the musical composition side, the songwriter side, and then it would be the record label on the recording artist side. So they're the ones that are owners of the copyright, charged with enforcing any sort of infringement issues, and they're the ones that handle licensing, and like we discussed before.
Next question here: how long will I own the rights to the music royalties that I purchase? Depends on the asset. We work on a couple different term lengths for assets, ranging from 10 years to life of rights. So we already talked about what life of rights means: 10-year term, just 10 years. We also will have 30-year terms, and then we'll also have fixed return assets, which aren't term based, but rather recoupment based. So that term can vary depending on how quickly it recoups. So always make sure that you understand the term length of the asset you're buying, that it will be listed on every single asset, but it can vary. Next question here: what is royalty age? I'm gonna again assume this refers to Dollarage, which we've talked about a couple of times already. Take a look at the link in the chat for the Dollarage article to get a fuller picture of what the Dollarage means. So yeah, take a look at that. What is the average amount for royalties? Do we have a median sale price? Do we know? I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't have that information, unfortunately.
Yeah, asset prices can vary anywhere from 5K to 5 million. So yeah, you'll always find something that's like close to 800 assets on the exchange at a variety of prices. So whatever price works for you, you'll probably find something in that range. How does the reporting work? So all the data that we receive comes from the entity that's providing the royalty payments, whether it's BMI, ASCAP, Sony, Warner, whoever it might be. So that data comes directly from them. Now, the specific reporting and how that's generated, I mean, Dayton, do you have any insights you want to add to that?
I mean, our system is being built out such that we can accommodate many of those kind of statements that come in from the different sources, which is kind of that's a data challenge that we have to deal with, because working with different sources and new sources all the time, it's a lot of data in a lot of different formats that we have to ingest, but that we're providing that reporting over to the investor for any asset that they admit. That's going to break down your earnings on a by title and by source basis.
Cool. Next question here: what financing options are available for investors? We do not offer financing. If you can get financing, I would be very curious to hear. So please do let me know. But as far as we know, you can't really finance this stuff. But again, if you're successful, we'd love to hear about it. How are deals brokered? How do creators get paid? So full disclaimer here, we are not brokers. We are simply a marketplace for royalties. We do not broker deals. But Rob, you wanna speak more specifically to that?
Sure, yeah. A seller will typically come to us, the owner of a royalty stream will come to us interested in seeing what kind of offers they could get on the marketplace. So they'll submit their royalty statements. We'll run them through our analysis software and give them kind of a range of like, hey, here's what your royalty stream looks like. Here's what we expect it would go for on the marketplace in this range. And then they can have the option of listing that on the marketplace. We'll do auctions for some of the more unique assets where we'll have a starting price, and once that starting price is met, then the auction runs. A seller can list their asset with no list price and just kind of field offers to see what the marketplace values their asset at. But for the most part, it's really just kind of sellers reaching out to us, finding our service, and then going through our due diligence process, getting their asset listed, and then at that point, it's really up to the marketplace to determine what the sale price is going to be.
Great. Next question here: how do I get royalty revenue coming to my account? So, as part of our closing process, as Rob mentioned earlier, we will set you up in our admin portal called Payment Hub. So that's where you'll set up your banking information and how you want to receive the payments moving forward. Most people obviously opt for direct deposit, but you can receive a paper check. I believe that's only for domestic buyers. So you could choose that. And then royalties are deposited to your account as they're ready. Normally it's just a few days after the distribution. Again, as Rob mentioned, per our accounting terms, we do hold a 30-day window. That way, if there is something that's inconsistent or incorrect, we have time to rectify it. Normally doesn't impact the buyer at all because we do hold a portion of the seller's final payment in escrow for you, so you don't miss any payments or anything like that. But yeah, you set up whatever account you want it to go into, just put it in the Payment Hub, and we send it there wherever you specify. Next question is connected here. How does catalog admin work? Who performs it? What is the distribution fee charged? Are historical numbers net or gross distribution fees? So admin, we admin for assets that transact on the site. There's no admin fee for our service. That is a free service we provide. Larger royalty payors like, ASCAP, BMI, they do charge a fee, but it's not reflected in any of the statements that we receive and provide. So any financials that you see would be net that fee. So it's not really part of our system. I don't know, anything to add there, Dayton or Rob?
Yeah, I guess essentially it's the distributor who handles the administration of collecting the payments. Then Royalty Exchange receives those from the distributor and passes them along to the investor. We don't charge any fees. Any financial data, like John said, you see on Royalty Exchange will always be net of whatever the distributor's fees are, if there are any.
Next question here: are royalty investments regulated? Rob, want to talk about regulation?
Yeah, we had another question, I think maybe a little bit later on about securities, and they're not regulated by the SEC. It's considered one-to-one asset sales of an income stream. So there's no registration with the SEC unless they were to be fractionalized. We've done a couple of those private placement deals, but any asset you see on the Royalty Exchange marketplace is a one-to-one sale between the owner, the seller of the asset, and the buyer. It's a contractual right to receive income, so it's not regulated.
Great. Next one here, we've answered a lot of this. How much is needed to start investing in royalties? Can anyone invest in royalties? How do royalties work exactly? So yes, anyone can invest on Royalty Exchange as long as you get verified. So if you're not verified yet, go through that process. It's very straightforward. We've already talked about how much is needed as well as how royalties work. So again, look at our guides. That's gonna be the best way. It's got cash flow tables, walkthroughs, anything you can need to really understand the full picture of royalty cash flow. Next one here: once a purchase is made, where is the owner information stored and recognized? Rob?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it touches on one or two questions that have popped up in the Q&A. So there's really no title for a royalty stream. There are services. There's organizations that track who the songwriters and publishers are of songs. So the Mechanical Licensing Collective is one of the new ones that that's responsible for determining who are the songwriters, who are the publishers. There's no registry of who the ultimate actual owner of a percentage of a certain song is. So the title, quote unquote, title document is really your purchase agreement with the seller. Ideally, this is all traced back to who was one of the original songwriters. Those will be on the publicly available repertories with, in the US, it's ASCAP, BMI. Mechanical Licensing Collective also handles the publishing royalties as well. But really, it's your purchase agreement confirms that you own the asset that you purchased from the seller. Royalty Exchange has, our own database where we've tracked all of this information. And since we're collecting the royalties from the distributor and paying them out to the investors, we know who the rightful owner is of the royalties. So we're kind of the clearinghouse for everything that happens on the Royalty Exchange marketplace. But as far as a publicly available source to determine who the actual payees on these things are, it just doesn't exist.
Right. Next question we have here is buying royalties lucrative? It certainly can be. We've seen some people make a lot of money from these assets. All depends on the asset you buy, the price you pay, and how it performs. So certainly can be. Next question here. Do you have a training to understand the royalty income value? So we've recently started doing walkthroughs on analyzing an asset. So we've only done one so far, but we'll have more coming. So we released that in our marketplace update a couple weeks ago. So that would be the closest thing. But other than that, I would say to, again, just read the guides. The guides will show you what to look at, what different things mean, what different metrics are important. So look at the investor guides. Next question here. Do I have to register the bought license that I'm the owner of the rights for the royalties? Rob kind of touched on this one with the stored and recognized question, but anything to add there?
Right. Yes, there's nothing to register. Like I said, there's nowhere that these things are kept publicly. So you wouldn't register the rights that you own the royalties. It's really kind of handled by the contracts that you sign as a part of the deal.
Great. Next question here. How to best get started in royalty investing? Well, get verified with us first. Once you're cleared to purchase, then it's just finding an asset that you like in your price range. Best way to just get started is to just get started. So that'd be my recommendation there. Next question here. Would I be able to buy as a non-US citizen? I am South African. Yes, international investors are more than welcome to purchase on Royalty Exchange. We have investors literally all over the world. At a certain point, we had an investor on every continent, including Antarctica. So yeah, you absolutely can. Again, just get verified, make sure you understand the rules, and then it should be no problem. Will more assets containing holiday content be made available? Probably. We can't really predict what assets we'll get. Really depends on the artist that we're working with, what's in their catalog. But just given the assets that have already transacted and how Royalty Exchange is growing, it's very likely that we'll get holiday content assets. So yeah, it's very, very possible, and I would say likely. Dayton or Rob, anything else you want to add to that? Cool. Next question here. The price multiples look high to me. Is this usually the case? It's a good question. It really depends on the asset. We do see stuff that's, really consistent, high dollar range, high earners that tend to have high multiples. But it really depends. We see stuff that sells at a 2 or 3 times multiple too. Royalties are a very popular investment vehicle right now. So there's a lot of competition on the marketplace. Competition increases prices and multiples. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. And Dayton, Rob, anything you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, to touch on your last point with that, John, the trend has been over time, for the better part of the past 10 years, for multiples to increase for exactly the points that John laid out. More investors are seeing this music, income stream as a valuable asset. And as more people are drawn to investing in these kind of assets, naturally the multiples are going to increase.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, it also is impacted by who is buying. Different investors have different returns thresholds that they need to meet. So, if your tolerance is 10 to 12%, you're not going to pay the same multiple as someone whose tolerance is 6 to 8%. So it also depends on, who's interested. And that, we have no way of predicting what that is. So next question here, how is this not a regulated security? How are gains taxed? Rob, again, we touched on this earlier, but want to dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, again, on the security piece, they're considered a one-to-one sale of an asset between one buyer, one seller. So that's kind of how they stay out of the securities realm. Again, the taxation is the royalty earnings you have is taxed as ordinary income. There are options on how you as an investor can amortize the purchase price of a royalty asset. One is a straight line amortization over a certain number of years, and the other is an income forecast method where you're kind of taking the past results, projecting out what they would earn in the future, and then determining how much you can amortize based on what actually happened compared to your projections. There's a couple of resources, I think, on the Royalty Exchange blog that kind of goes through those as well. So you would want to check those out.
Cool. Awesome. And then connected to that, why can an investor not buy part of the royalties? Why is it an all or nothing investment? Again, talking about securities. Rob, want to elaborate?
Yep. Yeah, we want to keep these one-to-one transactions between buyers and sellers. Once you start fractionalizing an asset and selling it to a bunch of different people at one time, certain shares or ownership interest in the same exact asset, then you start inviting some security concerns that you'd have to either register or offer through Regulation D.
Next one here, do you offer investor mentorship? No, we don't. Again, we're not financial analysts or advisors or anything like that, so we cannot mentor you. If you wanted to, schedule a one-on-one to talk through an asset to help you understand the data you're looking at, we could do that, but we cannot mentor you. So kind of yes and no there. Just reach out to us and let us know if you want a little bit more specific of a walkthrough, and we can get something set up for you. Next question, are there country music offerings in particular? Yes, tons of country music. Just take a look at the exchange. I know we had a couple big ones that were up there recently. So yeah, definitely country music. Can investments be made using cryptocurrency? Only the NFTs. We do not accept crypto payments for regular asset purchases. Crypto can be used for the NFT purchases. I actually believe it has to be used. So we have to receive payment in Ethereum for those. Next question here. How are the assignments of rights validated and the calculations / disbursement of royalties administered? Again, something we've touched on a couple of times. Rob, you want to just elaborate?
Correct. Yep. Royalty Exchange will handle the facilitating the assignment with the ultimate royalty distributor, whoever is responsible for licensing the content and paying royalties. So we'll submit the paperwork, then we'll collect from them on your behalf and pay those through to you.
Cool. Next question here. Do you see a further and faster influx of more firms that can wield $1 billion plus, i.e. Hypnosis and Harborview, in the near future? Good question. I think we've actually seen another big investment fund pop up in the last couple of weeks. So I would say, yeah, expect it. No, Rob, Dayton, anything you guys want to say there?
Yeah, I mean, the iBanks are here. The big private equity players are here. There was an article that I saw just the other day on Music Business Worldwide. KKR bought a catalog from Cobalt for over $1 billion. It's going to turn that catalog into bonds. Is there going to be more transactions in this space from a lot of these major players? Like Hypnosis is a little different because they're kind of doing their own thing, but a lot of funds that may be backed by private equity or investment banks, they'll probably do more of those, but the space is already pretty well saturated with a lot of really big players that can throw a lot of money around to acquire these really valuable blue chip assets.
Next question here is a good question. How does an investor know if they're being paid the full royalty on all qualifying sales? How can I know actual sales? So this is a tricky question. A lot of the royalty payors that we work with have zero audit rights for their members, like ASCAP BMI most notably. So we have to go by what they report. Robert Dayton, do you guys have anything specific you want to elaborate on there?
Yeah, I guess to kind of break down how you can know actual sales, I think I would change the word sales to usage, because sales would be more of on the record label side. So if the use of a song, it could be a public performance, we'll see the granular data from the distributor. And if there is an issue, then we have relationships with all these distributors that we can address. And, if we see something drastically drop off or stop, but we don't perform full-on audits. It's really kind of more of a, hey, this looks strange based on what we've seen in the past. What's going on? And we'll see those from time to time, and oftentimes we'll be able to figure out what happened and get that resolved.
Yeah. Next question here. How is the trade facility set up? So I'm going to assume this is in regards to just general transacting on royalty exchange, which we talked through the process a couple different times. I guess one thing I would add to that is if you buy a qualifying asset for the exchange, it will automatically get relisted there for you. That provides you liquidity options. There's no obligation to sell, but then you can field offers. You can set a minimum offer amount if you don't want to get bothered. You can set a list price, whatever you want. But that way, you have liquidity options. So that's the only other thing I would add there. Rob Dayton, if you guys have anything you want to say additional. Okay. Next one here. Can I invest in other types of royalties besides music? Yes, you can. Music is just the most popular thing that we see. But we can really work with most forms of intellectual property. Some high profile ones we've seen in the past, like Listerine royalties. So we'll hopefully get more of those royalty shares in the future. Obviously, the Cherry Garcia stuff, many of you have probably seen. That's trademark royalties for ice cream usage. We've seen book publishing royalties, film and television royalties. So yeah, you'll definitely see more stuff beyond music. Next question here. How is the royalty valuation performed? How is Dollarage used and calculated? Dayton, you want to talk about valuation methods?
Sure. When we're valuing an asset, we're taking a look at the historic earnings. We're taking a look at the income mix. Where's that money coming from in terms of number of works, to different streams of income? We've already touched on a little bit. Is this from streaming? Is this from radio? Is this from live? Is this from synchronizations? And we're also looking at just the general trend in earnings as well. Is it increasing over time? Is it decreasing over time? How does that pan out over the different, different tracks, and how is that performing given the different dollar ages that are being implicated in that catalog? And so we'll generate that pricing based on what the expected cash flows look like. And we'll also bear in mind what the dollar age for the overall asset is when we're taking a look at the pricing. As we've covered already, something that has a lower dollar age, more volatility in the future distributions translates into higher risk, and that's going to lead to a lower multiple. Something that's higher dollar age, that's going to be more likely to be a more consistent cash flow over time. That's going to get a higher multiple.
Cool. And the next one here is simply, what does dollar age mean? We've got the article linked in the chat to take a look at that. We've also talked about dollar age a number of times on this, so you're welcome to review back. This is being recorded and their replay will be posted. So if you showed up late or something, like missed something, feel free to take a look at that too. How are the royalties managed? Are all / a portion of the composition and master rights assigned to and dispersed by royalty exchange? Rob, you want to talk about assignment stuff?
Yeah, just to reiterate, the composition and master rights are going to stay with the publishers and labels. Royalty exchange would just be collecting payments and passing those through, so that the rights still remain with the underlying rights holder.
Cool. Next one here. What are the ways in which the royalties you purchase grow over time? How long does it take for your payout to process? That is kind of an impossible question for us to answer. We can't predict the future performance of royalty assets. Some grow, some shrink. Dollar age helps determine that, as we discussed a few times. So can't really answer that one. And then how long does it take for your payout to process? I'm not sure if you're referring to recoup, as in like start seeing upside, or how long is our processing for individual payments, which we've talked about a couple of times. Normally processing the individual royalty payouts is a few days, maybe a week to two, depending on the complexity of the distribution. As far as recoupment, depends on the multiple you paid, how it performs ongoing, and you know what the price was essentially. So a combination of all those. Is there a minimum amount of money you must have in savings before buying a NFT? I mean, again, like our lowest pricing that we see, that 5 to 10K range. So that still kind of holds even for NFTs. Not much more to say there. How will I be able to purchase a royalty of the product? How will I be able to make ROI of the royalty purchased? I think this is talking about getting verified. So yeah, if you get verified, then you can buy the royalty stream. I'm not sure what you mean by the product. I mean, if you're referring to a specific royalty type for trademark, that's something that's product driven. How will I be able to make ROI of the royalty purchase? I mean, just collect. Just by collecting, you're getting your return. How do you develop an investment strategy for investing in royalties? Again, tough question. Really depends on what your portfolio looks like, how much capital you're looking to allocate towards royalties as a position in your portfolio, and you know what that means for you. And then, you know, if you're a more aggressive investor looking for higher upside, then you'll be looking for those lower Dollarage assets that hold that kind of upside. If you're more of a long-term investor, you know, higher Dollarage stuff. So really it depends on what you're trying to do with royalties and how they fit in your overall portfolio. That's what I would say there. Date, Rob, if you guys have anything to add to that. Okay, cool. Next one here, what kind of payment is accepted? Which we touched on earlier, wire transfer. Wire transfer of US dollars is how you pay for assets on royalty exchange. It will supply you with all the payment information you need. Next one here, how do I get my ROI? Again, just collect the royalties. Once we set you up in Payment Hub, which is our admin portal, you'll get the payments with every distribution that you're entitled to. That's going to be your return. So calculate based on that. Please talk about future expansion of types of royalties. I would say first and foremost, streaming, just because that consumption usage is increasing, getting to more people's hands, more places, more artists are getting their music on streaming services. So that would be the big one. Dayton or Rob, you guys have anything to elaborate on there?
Yeah, I mean, a couple good recent examples of streaming platforms that did not exist, you know, a few years ago. TikTok, Peloton, you know, there's really endless ways to use music. And you know, these services, you know, at first they had issues with paying the royalties, but you know, after a while, the licenses got resolved. And I think, you know, anything you can imagine that could happen in the future, you know, music seems to have an application in really any new platform. So, you know, I think it's promising.
Cool. Next one here, another tax question. What resources are available to understand taxes surrounding this investment type? Can I write off my initial investment? Rob, do you want to touch on that again?
Yeah, I think our blog's the best. I've got the link here. I'm going to throw it in the chat. It talks about the amortizing a royalty purchase. That's going to be much more thorough and informative if you're interested in the taxation of these things.
Cool. And again, all of these links we're providing are available on our blog. There's a section dedicated to investors, so you'll want to look there. Next one here, are the royalty exchange services accessible from the EU/Netherlands? Yes, international investors are welcome. If you're having issues, something like that, reach out to us. We are very accessible, so feel free to contact us. Next one here, being new to royalties, how do you know that royalty is a good investment? Are there videos that walk you through it? Again, we are not advisors. We cannot advise you on what to buy and what's a good investment. That really depends on you, your investment strategy, and your portfolio. We do have some video walkthroughs available. Again, we mentioned that we have this new program we're doing where we actually pick an asset and analyze it. So I would say watch those too, and then read the guides. That's going to be the best resources we can provide you. What is the estimated average yield for the next 3 years? Again, we can't speak to the future performance of royalty assets, so we don't know. Historically, we see around 10 to 11% return site-wide for assets purchased on royalty exchange. So that's probably our expectation, but we don't know. We can only look at what's happened so far, and that's what we've seen. Date and Rob, if you guys have anything to add there. Cool. Next one, how do you decide on which royalty to invest in? Again, we can't answer that for you. That depends on you, your pricing tolerance, your investment strategy, and what you're trying to do. What is the best method to estimate value for a bid? How is Dollarage used to estimate potential earnings? Again, another question we've touched on a number of times. So I'd say read the Dollarage article and look back at our prior answers. Do any of your NFTs also include a physical token like what Lil Pump did? Rob?
Yeah, I mean, we have it's a token, it's a royalty exchange token. We have a graphic artist create the token itself, but really the value is the right to collect on the royalty stream.
Cool. Okay, next one here. When royalty exchange is paying me directly, are royalties paid by the PRO into escrow or assigned directly to me at the PRO level? Rob, you want to take that one?
Yeah, again, so royalty exchange helps facilitate the assignment. We then collect the royalties from the distributor, and then we collect them, pay them through to you.
Perfect. Next one, how is the IRR calculated? Dayton, you want to talk about our IRR calculations we put up?
Sure, and formulas for how you can determine IRR, they're available on the internet. The IRR it's the discount rate that would set the net present value of an investment to 0. And we use that's associated with a lot of our listings. So investors get a sense at when they're putting a bid on a particular asset, what the expected IRR would be based on where we're valuing that particular asset. So IRR, you're taking a function of the net present value, where you're setting that to 0 when you're looking at the net cash flow during the period of the investment, over less the total investment, initial investment costs, and that's divided by the 1 plus the IRR, which is the internal rate of return, to the power of the number of the time periods for that particular investment. That's that's the formula for it, and we're following that and including that just as a reference point for our investors with our listings.
Right. Yeah. So we use that purely theoretically. Just full disclaimer there. We'll note that on the IRR calculations we throw up there too, but yeah, that's theoretical. Next one here. How do I know that I paid the best price and not too much for the item? We can't answer that for you. Depends on your pricing tolerance, your return tolerance, your return scenarios you need to see. So, do your analysis and determine what pricing threshold works for you. Last question here for the submitted questions. Can I promote the music I own the rights to? Technically, no, you do not have that right. That right remains with the copyright owners. But I've heard lots of creative strategies from investors on how they want to or hope to improve the earnings of the music. So as long as you aren't breaching the copyright laws, then you can do whatever you want. Rob, anything you want to elaborate on?
Yeah, I think the key distinction is promotion versus actual licensing. You don't have the authority to sign any licenses. But if if you're a social media influencer, you can send links out to the YouTube video. You can put it on your TikTok. You can do a lot of different things if you have an audience. If you happen to know a music supervisor for a production, you can kind of pitch them to get your songs in their movies. Ultimately, you don't have the right to sign anything about it, but
our suggestion.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So that covers our submitted questions. And I see we have a number of live questions here. So we're going to run through these. First one, who and how can I validate the quote ownership of royalties? And after the sale/purchase is made, how can the ownership title be updated and who does that? Rob, you want to talk about that? It's kind of contract centric.
Yeah, I kind of touched on this, Jose, when I answered the prior question. There really is no kind of title document. The purchase agreement proves your ownership, and everything that happens on the royalty exchange marketplace. Royalty exchange is really kind of the clearinghouse for who owns what.
Cool. Next one from Jose. Who collects and pays the sync royalties to the royalty owner? What is the cost of this service? So that depends on if it's included in your asset, which not everything does include the sync payments. But I guess that'd normally be the publisher, right, Rob?
That's right. Yeah. And just to clarify, a royalty is an upfront payment for the right to use a composition and or a recording in a TV show or a movie or commercial, some sort of visual media.
This one from Tiffany, just to follow up on what Dayton mentioned. So the royalty stream is paid through royalty exchange and the rights are not changed at the level of the payor.
The rights are changed from the seller to royalty exchange, and then royalty exchange is responsible for paying through.
Right. What's important here is that the crediting and the logging with the payor doesn't change like that. The songwriter is still the songwriter, right? And it's essentially their entitlement that they sold to you. So as far as the payor is concerned, that's information stays the same, and then we get placed as the admin to facilitate the payment for you.
Yeah, and the mechanism for that in most cases is called a letter of direction, where the original creator directs their distributor to pay a different party.
Next one here again from Jose. In other industries, I can buy an asset and make subsequent investments on it, like marketing to increase its value. Is that something that I can do with music royalties? Rob?
Yeah, same answer. You don't have the licensing rights, but you can put music in social media. You can kind of do things like that.
Cool. This is an anonymous question. Can you address the recent controversy surrounding Spotify and several artists removing their music from the platform and how that has or might affect royalties on your platform?
Yeah, if an artist removes their music from Spotify, it will no longer earn from Spotify.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note that that's just one revenue source. They could still have their stuff streaming on Apple Music. Like it could still earn from radio. So it'd just be one source type, and that also assumes that you're earning from that catalog. So if you don't have any tracks in your catalog that was associated with that could actually help you, and that there's less competition of streams, so you might see more streams. It could even help you. It's hard to kind of gauge right now. We'll kind of see what happens. I don't know if you got anything else there, guys. Okay. Next one from Quasi here. Will the sales of huge catalogs from the acts like Bob Dylan affect the smaller market via royalty exchange? Not likely. It's kind of a different ballpark when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars versus what we see here. So I mean, if anything, it draws more attention to the royalty space. So more people get involved, which that could impact multiples. So that might be an indirect symptom, but Dayton or Rob, if you have anything to add there.
No, I think that's exactly right, John. I think it's going to make people more aware of investing in royalties generally. So there's going to be more investors that are drawn into the space. There's also going to be more sellers that are drawn into the space too, because they're going to see Bob Dylan sold his stuff for whatever X multiple that they think that he got based on that transaction. And that's going to drive artists that want to command similar multiples, even on our platform as well.
Cool. Next one here. Is there any third party that audits the royalty figures, collection, and payments? Rob?
Yeah, really, royalty exchange is the independent third party. So we're the marketplace. Any listing you see on royalty exchange, those earnings will have been obtained by royalty exchange directly from the distributor. So those numbers have been validated, and then going forward, we're the ones that are collecting the royalties from the distributor on the investor's behalf. So it's really kind of royalty exchange is the third party that kind of handles all the payments and figures.
Cool. This one from Paul. Is there a guide on the meaning of terms used on royalty exchange? Paul, you're going to want to look at those guides we have linked in the chat. That will run through basic terminology, what you're seeing on the listings, how to look at the listings. So yeah, that should answer all the questions you have. If you do have more specific questions, feel free to reach out to us. I'm happy to hop on the phone and walk through that with you a bit more directly if you need. Do you charge an admin fee for royalty payments sent? Again, from Paul, no, there is no ongoing admin fee for our admin service. That is a free service we provide to investors. So the only fee that you pay is on a transaction basis. So the $500 or 1% at closing. Next one here, after the age expires, does it go back on the exchange and do you have the right to repurchase or does it go to bidding again? So if you're talking about the term ending, when a term ends for one of our deals, those rights automatically revert back to the original seller, to the original rights holder of that entitlement. They then get to decide if and when they want to resell at all. So it doesn't go back on the exchange, but it goes back to that seller and they get to decide what they want to do. Next one here from Daryl Pruitt. Is there different stages of buying royalties? How can I buy before it goes to auction? So royalty exchange is designed to be an open market. So there's no pre-sale offering or opportunity or anything like that. So your only option is to buy when the assets go live, at least for now. I mean, we have no plans on doing any closed deals or anything like that. Again, we're not brokers. We are simply a marketplace. Can the artist buy it back before expiration? So there was a period of time where we did include a buyback clause in our contracts. Normally that buyback clause was only valid for 2 years after the sale, and it required the seller to pay 150% of the sale price to buy it back. We have since phased out those clauses in our contracts. So they got phased out around 2018, I believe it was. So it's possible you can find assets that include a buyback, but it's pretty rare. A lot of the ones that we did do have expired already. Occasionally we'll include something like that. If there is a provision like that, it will absolutely be noted on the listing to make you fully aware. So keep your eyes out for that, but it'd be really, really rare. Next question here, follow up. Thanks for the clarification. Do you have a copy of a typical purchase agreement? Yes. All of our agreements are freely viewable on our terms of use page. That includes our NFT agreements, our purchase agreements, our accounting agreements. Everything is open source. So please, if you take a look, we can put a link to that. Rob just put a link to that in the chat. Take a look. It's all totally open. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to answer any of those questions. Next one here. After you purchase, can you relist at a markup set by me, or is it based on value you give it? Yeah, you're more than welcome to do that. Like we mentioned, we'll automatically relist eligible assets on the exchange, but you control the pricing. You can set the list price, you can field the offers. It's all totally up to you. The only exception there would be if we go to auction, in which case it's a little bit more of a structured deal because it's a guaranteed sale. But on the exchange, you as the owner, you control it. It's your asset. You do what you want with it. Next one here, is there a 1099 issued by you each year on income? Yes, you would receive a 1099. That would normally get sent to you through your payment hub portal, which is the admin portal. So that's where you get it. Next one here, can a qualified retirement plan such as an IRA purchase royalties? Yes, you can purchase through an IRA. We actually have a partnership with Alto IRA. So if you wanted to use that. So again, earlier on this webinar, we discussed our strict 2-day payment window timeline. So we do caution investors who want to use an IRA because oftentimes moving money out of an IRA will breach that timeline, which is a big no-no. So if you want to do something like that, we normally have to get letters of pre-approval from your IRA admin or whoever your the manager of the IRA is to ensure that that payment can be made on time. That's why our partnership with Alto is really great because we can get all that taken care of. So reach out to us. You can do it, but we need to make sure that everything's set up prior to you buying the IRA because it does breach our timeline. Rob, you have anything you want to add to that?
Nope. Yep. Just as long as your administrator approves it, we're good.
And this is that part of that same one. How often are payments made, monthly, quarterly, et cetera, et cetera? Depends on the asset. We touched on this at the very beginning, but most commonly we see quarterly, but it depends. Every royalty payor has a different distribution frequency and schedule. So typically, if you just look at the period by period earnings chart on the listing, you can get a sense for what you're dealing with, but it varies. So yeah. All right, and that looks like that's all of the questions. Are there any last questions that anyone has? Please submit them to the Q&A now. I'm going to give this just a few minutes for people to formulate and type out their questions. But if there are no other questions, then we're going to call this webinar complete. So last questions, send them in now. And as a reminder for everybody, this is being recorded and we will be posting it on the site. So if you wanted to go back at any of the answers that we've answered here, you're welcome to do that. So yeah, please feel free to look back at that. Oh, I see something on chat here. When is your next investor webinar? I missed most of it. Adam, don't worry. We do these once a quarter. Yes, we can definitely email you a link. I'll definitely send you a link to the recording. Yeah, these are quarterly. We used to do the monthly, but attendance was dropping off a bit. So we figured, hey, let's just do it once a quarter and answer everyone's questions all at once. So yeah, quarterly is when we host these. And please feel free to come back. Yeah, happy to answer any questions you guys have. All right, last call for questions here. Okay. Well, thank you all for attending. We really appreciate you taking the time. We hope this was helpful. Again, if you have more specific questions or you feel that we didn't fully answer your question, feel free to reach out to us. We are very accessible and always happy to help. And yeah, have a great rest of your weeks. Anything else we can do for you, we're here.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.